Salutations, my dearest friends. My name is Samantha, and today I'm going to be doing a reader's guide to one of my absolute favorite authors, Marina Vivancos. So how are you? Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back, guys. I am ridiculously just over the moon excited to be filming today because I'm going to be doing an author overview, a reader's guide, an author binge, whatever you want to call it, of Marina Vivancos. I have been just like gushing and shouting from the rooftops how much I love Marina Vivancos' writing. She has quickly become one of my favorite authors ever. One of my absolute favorite books that I read in a really long time was Divine River by Marina Vivancos, and I feel like that book like fundamentally changed me. To have an author be my favorite, I feel like I have to read the majority of their books, and the majority of their books have to be 5 stars. And that's Marina Vivancos. I've read her entire backlist now, which is why I'm filming this video, and every single one that I've read has been 5 stars. I will have graphics up on my Instagram. If you want something to quickly reference, I will leave that Instagram post down below. I'm going to be posting it at the same time that I'm posting this, so I have different graphics that kind of divide her books in each category. We talk about Marina Vivancos, just an overview about the author. Marina Vivancos writes exclusively ebooks, which is a travesty because her covers are gorgeous, and I'm just like crossing my fingers that we'll get them in paperback one day. But she writes exclusively ebooks, predominantly on Kindle Unlimited. I just have a newsletter that I would recommend you joining. You're not going to get like overloaded with emails, but she does a pretty good job at updating you guys on what she's writing. There's a bonus book if you sign up for her newsletter, and she also does like recommendations of her favorite authors on there as well. From what I know about Marina Vivancos, she was born in Venezuela. I know that she has backgrounds in being a therapist, which I feel like is really important to know because when you start reading her books, you're going to notice a theme that so many of her books really follow the character's journey of self-acceptance, discovering their sexuality, focusing on their mental health. Her books almost feel like cathartic in a sense that it's just like this emotional journey. They're so emotional. She does something so incredibly special where her books are sweepingly romantic, still really steamy, but then they are so heavy in emotion, and you finish her book with like this feeling of just like awe. And I don't know how else to explain it. It is absolutely beautiful. Look at her website. Her tagline is that she is a queer author writing queer romances. All of her books, except like 1 or 2, are male-male romances. I will say, because her books are so deeply emotional, make sure to check the trigger warnings on her books. She is really good at listing them in her author's blurb, so take care and make sure to read those trigger warnings. Marina Vivancos really does love 2 tropes, and that is friends to lovers and found family. You will see that like throughout a lot of her books, so if you're a fan of those 2 tropes, then I highly recommend. She writes a lot of friends to lovers, a lot of fated mates, and a lot of found family. I know that was a really long intro, but I wanted you guys to know a little bit about the author and know kind of going into her books what to expect. Okay, I divided her books in kind of like 4 different categories. So we're gonna have novellas, her Omegaverse books, her other books that are more contemporary new adult and fall under different series, and then books that she has co-written with another author. Listed on Goodreads, Marina Vivancos has about 22 books. Again, I've read every single one and we will be going over them. All right, let's go ahead and start with her novellas. She has a total of 6 novellas available on Kindle Unlimited, and these are all less than 200 pages, but let me tell you, they still pack a punch. So I'm gonna start with my very favorite book. I'm gonna put this first so you guys can see it in case you don't watch the whole video, because this is the best one. Favorite book of hers, favorite book of all time. Actually, I think I'm gonna get a tattoo of this book, and that is Divine River by Marina Vivancos, obviously. It is 139 pages. It's a friends to lovers romance as well as a small town romance, and it is deeply emotional. So this book follows Mike and Jason. Mike grows up in this really small town, getting a new neighbor, Jason, who immediately becomes his best friend. Jason has like this sunshine personality, and they are immediately drawn together and become really good friends. That transitions into a really sweet romance, but the core of this book is truly Mike's personal journey. Again, Mike lives in a really small town that is not so open in their views. Dad is pretty close-minded, and he has always known that he was gay, but he's never had the ability to explore that. As he is getting older, he realizes that he likes to be both masculine and feminine, and kind of exploring that like fluidness of gender. Very introverted, but he starts to really embrace himself, embrace his sexuality, and realize that he doesn't have to fit and conform into all of these little boxes that people want to put him in. And it's this beautiful, just sweepingly romantic story about him falling in love with his best friend, but also falling in love with himself and who he truly is. And it is absolutely gorgeous. I do not think I have read a book more beautiful than this. It means so much to me. Like, I feel like this book is like imprinted in my soul now. I was just as invested as our main character's personal growth as well as the romance. Okay, the next ones I'll kind of go through a little bit quicker. So Crybaby is the next one. This was actually the first one that I picked up. I discovered Marina Vivancos because Kindle Limited recommended this book to me because, you know what, Kindle Limited just gets me, okay? So this one is 117 pages. It is a French lover's romance, and it's pretty low angst on like the emotional scale compared to some of her other books. So this one follows Jason and Sasha, which is kind of funny. She has two heroes named Jason, but this is a different book. Hero Jason is bisexual, and he's kind of like discovering this new kink. He likes when his partner cries, but not in a degrading way, more so like crying with like emotion and overwhelming pleasure. And he's really discovering that. And our hero Sasha is gay, also comes from a family that he's never really been able to explore that, and he's kind of nervous about like going out into the dating scene. So he propositions his best friend Jason to have a friends with benefits situation, and they do. I will say this is a pretty steamy, quick read, but like I said, it packs a punch. The banter between our two characters, unmatched. This book is hilarious. It made me laugh so much. So if you're looking for a more lighthearted read by her, I would recommend this one. I loved it. This one is I've Walked Where You've Been, and this is another strong contender of like my top favorites for her. It's 92 pages. It's kind of like an opposites attract situation, and it takes place in a world where soulmates exist. There's nothing magical about it. It's just everyone has a soulmate, and they usually find their soulmates as adults. But our characters find each other when they're like 9 years old. And when you find your soulmate, you actually cannot be physically separated from them for too long, or you feel like a soulmate sickness. That bond to be strong for your own physical health. And our characters are complete opposites, and they actually grow to really not like each other. They don't understand why they're fated mates. They hate that they're forced to be together until they're a little bit older and a little bit more mature, and they decide to try and figure out why fate bonded them together, and they grow together. Really sweet, and you get to see the characters really grow and develop as a couple, but as well as themselves. For such a short book, I feel like the world building and the character arc was so good. Okay, the next one is called Spy on Me, and this is her newsletter bonus book, so you have to sign up for her newsletter to get this one. It's not connected to any other book. It is its own standalone novella. This one is really cool because it follows a spy and his handler. In my romance, our hero is a spy who has been in this company for a really long time, and he's known as like the wild card. He doesn't listen to his handlers, he doesn't follow directions, but he ends up getting a handler who really knows how to work with him, knows how to direct him, and knows how to actually listen to him too. And they become really good friends, and through all of their missions together, they fall in love. This one is very short. It's kind of like a slice of life situation. This one is called A Wild Thing Grows. This is 37 pages. It's a short winter novella. It has a little bit of magical realism vibes. Our hero is pretty isolated from the town that he lives in. He lives alone in this cabin. The people are pretty cruel. He is so kind, he's so caring, and he has this type of magic that is really connected to the earth, and he really takes care of it and treasures it. And one winter, a man comes from the forest that is created from the earth, and he is there to really care for our hero in the way that he has cared for nature. It's an interesting premise. I still think it's a really good read. Like I said, it's very short. Last novella is I've Been Careless with a Delicate Thing. This one is 108 pages, and it is a friends to lovers romance. I'm looking down, it's because I'm reading my notes and I want to make sure like I'm getting everything correct. This book follows Silas and Oscar, and they meet at a bar. They have mutual friends, but they really meet at this one dance club, and they are instantly attracted to each other. They end up having a one-night stand, but their chemistry is off the charts, so they form this friends with benefits situation. They're both pretty young and kind of discovering like their different kinks that they're into. I call them like a baby sub and a baby dom because they're new to the BDSM world, and they're really discovering that together, setting each other's boundaries in such a safe and sweet way. I'm not a fan of BDSM, or if you're new to it, I actually really recommend this one because I thought it was written with so much care and so beautifully. So those are her 6 novellas, the ones that are under 200 pages. She doesn't tend to write super long books in general, but those I would consider really novella length. So now we're going to move into our next category, which is Omegaverse. Now, if you're not familiar with Omegaverse, I have a whole video dedicated to it. I have recommendations, a video of kind of like a guide and terms you will see in Omegaverse. Omegaverse. So I will leave that link down below. Just so you know what Omegaverse is, it's kind of like if shifter romances and fated mates like had a baby, you know? There's alphas, omegas, and betas. Alphas are like the top of the pack, a little bit more dominant. Those are more close to what you consider like a regular human. And then omegas are usually a bit more submissive. They're usually like the core of the pack. They have connections with their fated mates and have different things that they biologically like require depending on their destination. But it's really like shifter romance meets fated mates, like I said. First one is her Honey Thorn series, and there are 2 books in this series. So book 1 is called Honey Thorn. The tropes for this one are arranged marriage and enemies to lovers. This book follows Milan and Raphael. They have an arranged marriage. They both come from different kingdoms. Milan comes from like a summer kingdom and Raphael comes from like a winter kingdom. End up having an arranged marriage really so that their kingdoms and their families can have a alliance. And Milan is an omega and he's really wanting to make the best of the situation, but Raphael is pretty jaded. Not his first bonding. He had a previous omega who was very manipulative and he had a lot of hurt in that relationship, and that's kind of how he thinks all of omegas are supposed to be. Off on the wrong foot, to say the least, and it follows the relationship as they're trying to make this arranged marriage work. It is pretty slow burn compared to some of her other books, and I will say our hero is a little bit of a jerk in the beginning of this book, but I feel like he does the appropriate amount of groveling, and I really felt like this was a good omegaverse if you're not used to that subgenre. The second book in the series is really where the series shines, and that is called Cherry Vine. This is also an arranged marriage. Our characters again are together as sort of an alliance for their kingdoms. Our omega is the one who has previous trauma in their relationship. He had a really bad alpha who was both like physically and mentally abusive, so I definitely would read the trigger warnings for this one. But our hero is such an absolute cinnamon roll and like worships the ground that his omega and fated mate walks on. Really taking the time to introduce the omega into his culture, showing him that he can find happiness in their bond. So I just really love this one. Our hero is really sweet. Next one is another series, and that is her Alpha Omega Hockey series. I know she plans on continuing this series and writing more, but right now there's only 2. Omegaverse and hockey and male romances, like, does not get better. This series is fan-fucking-tastic. So the first one in this series is Fresh Ice, and the tropes for this one is friends to lovers and found family. It follows Alonzo and Levi, and they are rookies in their hockey season. They're both really trying to make a name for themselves and stay on this team, this professional hockey team, into becoming roommates and really good friends and like supporting each other through their very first season. Levi is an alpha and Alonzo is an omega, but he is presenting as an alpha. His hockey is an alpha dominated sport. There is no omega who is like openly out in this hockey team. There's a lot of prejudice, so he's really hiding the fact that he is an omega. He does discover his secret, but he supports him in such a wonderful way. This is another cinnamon roll hero. They end up leaning on each other throughout their hockey season, and this one is just really sweet and also pretty steamy. The next one is called Face Off. I'd say you have to read this series in order because the second book I'm going to talk about follows a set of characters that are in the first book. Guys, I love this one so much. This is an enemies to lovers romance between 2 rival hockey team captains. They play on rival teams, they're captains of the team, and they have a little bit of an enemies to lovers situation going on. It's also a second chance romance, so our 2 heroes have been playing hockey for a really long time. Like I said, they're captains, and they actually met each other their rookie season, and they had a very quick whirlwind romance. One of our characters is an omega, the other is an alpha, but again, this is an alpha dominated sport, so our hero who's an omega is hiding that. Don't do any spoilers, but just life and hockey tear them apart, and they both feel betrayed in their own ways and go years of not speaking with one another until our hero is outed as an omega, reconnecting with his old lover, if you will. Sweet, it's steamy, there's like this tension between our characters. I absolutely love this one. Next, I lumped in the omegaverse section because they're similar in theme, but these actually are a dom sub universe. So if you're familiar with BDSM and like dominance and submissive, that's what this is, but each person is born with that designation. So it's not just like a kink, like you're physically born as a dominant, a submissive, and you require different things depending on your designation. So the first book in that series is called Oh Sacred Dark. Of the tropes for this one is it has a really cool magic system. It's like witches and magic. It has a found family trope, and also our main character is healing from abuse and like previous trauma with his family. So definitely check the trigger warnings for this one. The series is called the Coven Ties series, by the way, and I know she has said that she plans on writing more in this series. Again, I would recommend reading them in order. This book follows Tyler, who is a dominant, and Roman, who is a submissive, and Roman comes from a previous coven of witches who practice in chaos magic, which is like the darkest, most illegal, most forbidden magic that you can do. Part of this coven that is doing illegal things, and he ends up working with another person in their coven and exposing them and taking them to the council, and the coven gets disbanded. So they get sent to another coven where it's much safer and they don't participate in the chaos magic, but he is healing with so much trauma, and that is when he meets our hero. That is the first dominant that has shown him any sense of kindness, and the connection that they have together is really, really beautiful because they're both healing different parts of themselves, and I really love this one, but please check the trigger warnings. The next one is called Out of the Wild Nights. This is the second book in that series. The day that I'm filming this is the day that this book actually released, so it is pretty new. It's her newer release. One, our hero comes from a family that really took advantage of him as a child. Hero gets abused as a child by his own family, and he ends up coming to the same coven that the first book has animal magic, so he works with animals and he's healing, and he really hates the fact that he is a submissive. Has just like a lot of negative connotations about himself and about magic, and he falls in love, and it's really, really beautiful, but also really, really intense. Next 7 that I'm going to talk about are all more contemporary books. I will definitely say that this next grouping is a little bit more slow burn, and a lot of these heavily focus again on the character's personal journey and their journey with like mental health and discovering themselves and learning to love themselves. Next 2 are a part of her shifter romance series. It's called the Natural Magic series, and I will say this is the only series that I think you could read out of order. The first one is called In This Iron Ground. The tropes are shifter romance, it's pretty slow burn, it's a friends lovers romance, and it is deeply, deeply emotional. This is a shifter romance that takes place where each individual person has different levels of magic and kind of like an essence in their soul. They can be shifters, they can be necromancers, they can be witches, or they can be humans, and it's all of this different type of magic that exists. It really follows our main hero Damien and his personal journey. His parents died at a really young age, and he is bouncing back and forth between different foster homes. I will say this does have trigger warnings for child abuse. He ends up at a foster home that is horrible. He escapes into the woods to find like solace. He's truly alone in the world, and he escapes into the woods to find solace, and that is where he stumbles upon a pack of werewolves. A pack of werewolves really takes him in, and that is where the found family trope comes in. Pack has an older son named Hakan, who, I think that's how you pronounce his name, I'm so sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly, who is his best friend, and they grow up together and they grow together, and he ends up falling for him. It is a friends lovers romance, but like I said, it's very, very slow burn. The character, through different paths in his life, different relationships in his life, throughout the years, him and his best friend always find themselves back together, and it is just, oh my god, this book is so beautiful. Our hero has ADHD, and for so many years of his life he is told worthy that he's not good, so it takes a lot of unpacking that trauma for him to discover that he is worth something, and it's like, I literally want to cry just thinking about that fucking book. Okay, the next one is called All That Has Flown Beyond, and this book will also make me cry right now. Like, it's so emotional. This is a shifter romance, a second chance romance, and it is really just a journey of grief and depression. The book follows Kaio and Amik. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce that correctly again. Best friends, and they're part of a pack that gets attacked when they're younger, and a lot of their pack dies. The remaining pack is only these 3 teenagers that really cling to each other, and they're trying to build their pack. Characters are childhood sweethearts. Amik is a werewolf, and Kaio is a shaman, I think is what they call it, but basically he can do magic and healing. And I don't want to do any spoilers, but this does happen in the beginning of the book. He ends up getting kicked out of his pack and banned from the home, the only home that he ever knew, and there's so much hurt in that, and he spends so much years dealing with that grief and depression and not knowing his worth, not knowing where he belongs. This book is really a journey of him climbing out of that depression, and you get to see flashbacks of their relationship. So real, and I had to pause this book so many times because I was literally just bawling. Like, I felt it in the depths of my soul. Oh my gosh, I feel like this part, like, this book healed me in so many ways, but it was also like incredibly incredibly emotional. And our hero discovers his magic throughout the years, and he ends up going back to his town because there's someone attacking his old pack and he wants to help them. So he does, and it's their second chance romance. You get to see flashbacks of them as children falling in love, but then you also get to see the current day. They're healing from so much hurt in the past, and it is just beautiful. Next one is called Rat Park, and this is a standalone contemporary. Tropes for this one are age gap, friends to lovers, found family, and then our main hero is recovering from addiction. Main hero does not have the best parents. As a kid, he is introduced to drugs and alcohol at a very, very young age, and he quickly develops an addiction. And he goes through different stages of his life as an addict. So our hero ends up meeting a cop who's really big on rehabilitation. He ends up working at a shelter with her and volunteering at a shelter with her. He invites him to a family dinner, and he really becomes part of the family, and he ends up becoming fast friends with her younger son. But like I said, there's an age gap. The beginning of the book is really just their friendship, but as they get older, it follows their romance, and it's really beautiful because it is our hero overcoming his addiction, breaking all of the generational trauma that he has, and loving himself and falling in love with his best friend. It's such a good book. I really, really recommend it. It's called Paint Eater, and now we're kind of entering like her new adult romances. I feel like these were her first books. Friends to lovers romance, like I said, she loves that trope, and our hero has ADHD. So our heroes meet in college. It really follows our main hero, Jay, who is a artist, and he likes to do street art, and he really likes immersing himself in different cultures and communities and really portray that in his art. And he falls in love with our other hero, who comes from a family that is a little judgmental, a lot of money, and his family has a lot of expectations on it, and he's struggling to like find himself as a young adult photographer. And he starts taking pictures of Jay's art, and they go to like different parts of New York City to create art and to also take photos. Really fun, pretty low angst romance, and I really loved this one. Set of 3 are her last set of books that she has not co-written. So this is following her Fox Lake series, and this is a new adult contemporary series that follows a group of college students. I do think you have to read them in order. The first one is called Sicken of the Calm, and the tropes are friends with benefits, mutual pining, and light BDSM. This follows our characters Joaquin, who's Puerto Rican, by the way, which I just love. You guys know I'm Puerto Rican, and I love when I read about a Puerto Rican character. And Ezra. High school together, and Joaquin identifies as bi, but he wasn't really out when he was in high school, and he always had a crush on Ezra, but he was kind of like one of those unattainable people because he wasn't out, and he never expected, like imagined his crush would be someone he would actually end up with. But they go to the same college, they get paired together in a class, and they become really quick friends and have a friends to benefit situation. Characters are equally obsessed with each other, but they're like a little stubborn about it. It is a friends to benefit situation, and they're like not wanting to ruin their friendship. This is like BDSM. We're both very new to like kinks and that type of community, but I loved it. It was so the next one is called Nights Without Night. This is another friends to lovers romance. It's slow burn and has a hero who has PTSD. They grew up with one another. They were childhood friends, but they end up spending a lot of years apart because one of our heroes ends up joining the military and spending many years in the military in like a specialized unit. When he exits the military, he doesn't know what he wants to do with his life, and he's dealing with a lot of PTSD. They end up living together and kind of leaning on each other, helping his friend kind of like acclimate to society, and has been like hopelessly in love with each other, but it's always been like right person, wrong time, and I loved this one. The last one is called Fruit, and this is pretty much like her only one that isn't a male-male romance. Our heroine is bisexual. This one is like a really interesting premise. Our heroine ends up getting really drunk at a party and walking home and ends up seeing like a cat in a dumpster yard. Really injured. It looks like she had been abandoned, and she ends up saving this cat with the help of like some random stranger. Together they go to the vet and they help save this cat, but she can't really afford to keep the cat. So she leaves the animal at the shelter, and the next couple days she really regrets leaving the animal at the shelter, so she goes back to get it, only to realize that the guy who helped her save the cat went before her and adopted the cat. She's upset because she really wanted this cat in her life, and she's on the train. I know this is a really long premise, but she's on the train and she meets this young boy who's getting bullied. She ends up walking him back to a shelter, a safe haven in New York for kids who are a part of the LGBTQIA community, and she meets her hero, is the owner of this community center, and they end up like striking this deal where like she spends 1 week with the cat and he spends 1 week with the cat. Tears at this community center, and they fall in love. It's It's a little bit of an opposites attract romance. I really liked this one. Our heroine was very spunky and sassy, and I loved her. So the last two books that Marina Vivancos has written right now, like I said, she's still writing and coming out with new novellas. Two that she has co-written. The only two books that she's ever co-written, both co-written with E.M. Lindsay, who I'm not familiar with. I've actually never read any of her books. I've only read these. So these are both hockey romances. They're part of the Sin Bin series, and they're male-male romances. The first one is called Between the Pipes, and this is a polyamorous romance. I just love it. You guys know I love poly romances. I wish Marina Vivancos would write more. Existing couple who plays for the same hockey team, and they end up falling in love with their goalie and kind of like bringing him into their relationship, and it's really sweet. Characters is deaf in this romance, and I really loved reading about that representation. And then the other one is called Open Ice Hit, and this is an enemies to lovers romance about characters who play on rival hockey teams. This one is a very, very steamy, really gives off enemies to lovers vibes, and I loved it. Pretty different writing styles, and I think that is because it is co-written. The rest of the series does continue and follows like different hockey romances, but just the first two are written with Marina Vivancos and E.M. Lindsay together. This video was very, very long. My camera died so many times, and I kept having to pause to let it charge. Try to make it as organized as possible, but I know this was a really long video. I hope you guys check out Marina Vivancos. She is the best. Like, literally, I cannot explain like her books. What they do to me just makes me feel like it's therapeutic. Like, I just can't explain it. Is romance in its absolute finest form. Reading on Goodreads, just like her blurb, and I wanted to read it because I thought it was really interesting. It says, when Marina was a child, she couldn't sleep. Night after dissolving night, she just couldn't sleep. Nothing much worked until she started making up stories in her head. Suddenly, the transition into unconsciousness was a smooth dive into calm waters. Marina is currently in a period of sleepless upheaval, and she hopes writing down the stories in her head will cast the same spell it did years ago. And I just think it's so beautiful because her writing is so lyrical and so emotional and so impactful, and I just think she's doing things that no other author is doing. I truly feel that way. I hope that in the future we get some paperbacks, and yeah, I love, love, love this author. If I had to pick a favorite, I think I already made it obvious. It would be Divine River. Fucking best. That's the best book. I also really liked Crybaby. That one is a short, steamy novella. I also loved In This Iron Ground. That's such an interesting shifter, magical universe that she built, and I just love the main character in that, and seeing his personal growth and journey is like, oh, amazing. I love those three books, but honestly, I love all of them. I give them all 5 stars. So I hope you guys check her out, and if you do, let me know. I know some of my friends have already checked her out before. I just really want everyone to know this author. I think she's wildly underrated. Okay, I love you guys. I'm done talking now. I hope you guys check out this author. As always, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend time with me. It means the world to me. I hope you guys are all staying happy and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!